This is Susan Bassey, back with Mark the Process Server at the California Supreme Court in San Francisco. In this video, we're going to show the relationship between government attorneys, courts, and sheriff's deputies. And we're going to provide an update on that citizen's arrest involving Mark and the Sonoma County Council, Robert Pittman.
Just because you have a badge doesn't make you special and not able to take off your belt.
We're gonna scoot you down, son.
Now you're holding up the other.
Now I gotta move. Okay. Now you can move.
And it's always fun, interesting, and informative when Mark comes to town. And this time, we're going to talk about the judges in the highest court in the state. And we're also going to talk about how the courts function and how they might end up getting your property.
You know, I was thinking about the code enforcement issue. And when I was here years ago, this was a smaller exhibit inside the Supreme Court. And this is what they said, what Tani Sakahui, who was the Chief Justice from 2010 until the Giardi scandal broke. And she talked about that the reason that she got into law was because she witnessed her mom fighting the courts pro per when they took her family home. And for that reason, she got into the law. But what was interesting is when she got into the law, private judging soared, and the whole issue of taking homes through code enforcement, divorces, everything else replaced how they used to do it through eminent domain. So you know what eminent domain is?
That's where they just come to snatch what you have.
But they have to pay you fair market for it. And it was never really fair market, but they would do it, for instance, when they're going to put a new freeway in. Right. And they say for the public good, they need to take the property, right?
You might recall we first met Mark after we learned of this video and published it. It was later picked up by Audit the Audit. It's a video of the body cam from the Sonoma County Sheriff's deputy who went out to the home of County Counsel Robert Pittman. We have an update on this case and the lawsuit that's related to it. But on this day, the day that Mark was arrested by a citizen's arrest from the highest ranking attorney in the county, he was serving a lawsuit for a former San Francisco fire captain because Sonoma County was trying to use code enforcement to take his home.
Knock on things to see if someone's home.
Well, A, I was in the middle of a meeting. B, again, I'm not entering or opening the door for anybody.
And in case you missed that on the body cam, Mr. Pittman's statement is important because he talks about that he was working from home around 5 o'clock, which means he was working remotely as a county attorney instead of driving a few miles into the office. And he is now claiming that because he was working on county business from his home, that he has immunity at his home. And he has also obtained representation from his subordinates, other attorneys that taxpayers pay, who are now defending not only Mr. Pittman, but his partner who lives in that home and the trust that they own together.
Check with the sheriff's department. I was charged with trespassing once and not gonna hold. I'm just here to serve papers and I'm leaving now that it's
feels
done.
differently.
And you might have missed that in the first round of videos as well. Mr. Pittman is saying that the district attorney, who has now been run out of office by local voters, felt differently about process servers being able to lawfully do their job. And this is where we start to see too many attorneys, too much collusion, and what we commonly know is First Amendment retaliation.
So here's all this stuff.
Typically, police officers, process servers, and other individuals involved in the movement of court documents and legal procedures don't read the documents. So it was interesting that this sheriff deputy was interested enough to look at what was being served on Mr. Pittman. And if you may recall from the last video, Mr. Pittman tried numerous times to use his influence because county counsel are the attorneys for police officers when they get in trouble for misconduct.
That's my office, where you have it.
Okay. So Do you want to do the citizen's arrest for the trespassing?
Sure.
Okay. Let me go get that form for you to sign, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
All right.
In what appears to be a pattern of retaliation involving County Counsel Robert Pittman, we also learned that when that lawsuit was rolling through the courts, Mr. Pittman made efforts to have the individual who had served that lawsuit on him declared to be a vexatious litigant. A vexatious litigant is an individual who the courts say must ask permission to file a lawsuit or a pleading in the court. It's a way of violating someone's right to seek redress of their government by putting a little delay or obstruction in the process.
So that's another vexatious litigant out of Sonoma County?
Yes.
So they declared him, so you realize that one of the things that parents have complained about is they get declared vexatious in custody cases or divorce cases because they're disputing custody. It's only one case. And the law is written that if you file more than 5 actions, lawsuits in a year, but in family court, they count those actions as a litigation. So each time you file a motion, it counts as a litigation.
He even bought those trucks back in bankruptcy court for $250,000, and they still have not been returned to him. Right after you get through the Novato Narrows, when you're coming in, right at the beginning of the Narrows, there's that big lake area on your right, and beyond there, there's a little dirt. You know, it looks like a junkyard, not a junkyard, yeah, or a dump yard. Anyway, his trucks are in there working all day developing that property. That's where the receiver stored them. The receiver passed away. They never put another receiver on the case. And his trucks sit in limbo that he paid $250,000 for. He's down to just him and his son running 2 trucks and keeping Denbesti Soils alive.
What's the name of the business?
Denbesti Soils, and it's the owner, Paul Denbesti, out of Cloverdale.
Can you spell it?
Denbeste.
And he was declared vexatious, but the California Supreme Court reversed it.
Overturned it, and Sonoma County does not want to honor it.
For those who have spent their lives learning about the courts through television, movies, and newspapers, you might not understand how the courts really work. You might not understand what judicial immunity looks like and what happens when a judge doesn't follow the law or a trial court doesn't obey the Supreme Court in a state and overturn the orders that the Supreme Court said were unlawful or unconstitutional. And in fact, the only remedy that most people have when they're upset about a judge not following the law or acting unethically or with bias is to file a complaint with the California Commission on Judicial Performance, a judge watchdog that's like the internal affairs for judges.
Okay, great. Thank you, love. Okay, so you push the button, and when you go in, there's going to be some records on the discipline that is to the left of the door.
Okay. I also have another question, because I'm a licensed and bonded process server, and every once in a while I have to serve judges. Are there any rules on serving judges process? I've had one judge come out and tell me, he knows me. I shared an office with his son, and he's like, I don't want my address in any paperwork. Please go to Department 16 from now on. The clerk will take anything you have for me. I said, yes, sir. And you work with that, But I was wondering if there's rules, with attorneys, I believe there's a bar rule that says they have to receive process in their office during business hours. All right, I figured I'd check. Yeah, because with that, I just had to serve a lawyer down in San Jose, called out 5 cop cars, 6 cops, to say I'm not being served. And it's like, I've already seen you through the door when the officer opened the door with you, and you're already served. I'm just being polite. Instead of throwing it on the ground, I'll put it on the car politely, and I'll let you know. And then I do the same thing with judges and whatnot, but I just want to know if there was any rules. All right, what's your name, dear? Ann, it's nice to meet you. I'm Mark Andrews. Have a good day.
And I had a quick question too. I think I know the answer, but I just want to confirm. Private judges. The CJP has no jurisdiction over them, and the state bar really doesn't either. Kind of a loophole, right? If you're going to complain about a private judge, other than complaining about what they do as an attorney, there's really no way to complain about them, right?
Right.
If it's an independent though, there's nowhere to go, right?
I would try, if they're still licensed attorneys, I would just try the state bar.
Yeah, I've seen the state bar only discipline once, but it was confidential discipline. And so all these other private judge cases that, judges have reversed their orders, like in the Angelina Jolie case and everything, these people have no remedy to complain about the private judge, so. Okay, but what about if they're a retired judge? Because sometimes they're attorneys doing it, they never were a judge. But if they're a retired judge and they do it, still no jurisdiction?
In a private setting as an arbitrator or mediator.
Nothing.
Have no jurisdiction.
Okay, all right, thanks, Ann, you're
Thank you so
super
much,
helpful. We'll email you, thanks.
California has a statutory scheme that allows people to use private judges to settle their disputes instead of going to court. But few people know that you don't need to hire an attorney and pay exorbitant fees to a private judge. You can hire Mark the process server. You could even hire a journalist to be your private judge, because private judges don't need to be attorneys, and they're not subject to discipline by the state bar or the CJP if they're not an attorney. But in public court, judges who preside over proceedings are subject to the CJP discipline, and that's like the internal affairs for judges. Stuart Scott, a former Santa Clara County prosecutor, found himself the subject of CJP discipline early in his career.
You came back at 1:30 p.m., right? And you went back inside 75, right? You sat down.
Correct. I went by court to observe the court proceedings.
Nothing wrong with that. It's a public building, so you're free to go
that's
in
what I came by there to do.
Exactly. The one thing, though, we had a little concern was that when you came in and when you left, right? About 3 o'clock you left, right?
Yeah, I was there for about an hour and a half. I came by. I went through the actual the metal detector, and I went through the whole
we understand. So
okay.
The bailiff, I think you had some conversation with the bailiff as you were walking out, right?
I just asked him some information about the court, how long the judge has been on the bench
Correct.
for.
Do you remember saying something to effect of, hey, about Judge Scott saying, hey, he has weaved in and out of traffic court into criminal court?
This is a video that was taken by a father who was involved in a family court case, and he did what he should have done. He was investigating the judge who was going to hear that case, and when he made a comment to police, which he should have known not to talk to police, the police officers reported it to the judge, and the judge ordered the police to go out to his house and investigate further.
Now he said family.
Well, no, I was able to look online at a lot of the news articles,
right,
and like what ended up happening to him in criminal court, and the fact that the judge was then sent through traffic court,
right,
and then he reemerged in family.
Like most judges these days, Stuart Scott was a prosecutor, and he was most known for prosecuting a gang case out of Gilroy, California, the home of the Garlic Festival. And in that case, Stuart Scott told a story that wasn't true. He told a story about a gang enhancement in order to get somebody put in prison or jail longer than they should have been put in jail. And that lie was addressed by the highest court in federal court before you can go to the Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit. And they said that Stuart Scott had engaged in prosecutorial misconduct, meaning he had been a dishonest prosecutor when he was doing his job. He was appointed to the bench nonetheless, and he landed in criminal court. And while he was there, he engaged in ex parte communication with a prosecutor, meaning he left the public defender or the criminal defense attorney out of the conversation in his chambers. And that prosecutor was a female, and she complained that Judge Scott had made some inappropriate advances. So what do you do with a judge who's engaged in prosecutorial misconduct and lying in court as a prosecutor and an attorney? And what do you do with a judge who gets caught engaging in ex parte communication with prosecutors? You put him in family court if you're the Santa Clara County courthouse.
If you're walking into a courtroom, you should do a background, or not a background check, but a history. Do all that research. Right?
And that's my right to do it
right,
too. And I sat peacefully in the back of the courtroom. I wanted to watch how he handled other cases. I had a case earlier that morning, and I just wanted to see how he is actually handling cases.
Got it.
And I pulled case law up online, and I started looking at other people that were having interactions with him.
Okay.
For appeal, because I want to actually be able to appeal what had happened there in his courtroom.
There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. When you tell bailiff that, right? The bailiff has to let the judge know, okay? Because we don't know what's a threat, what's a real threat, what's a non-real threat, right?
No, I
So
didn't make any threats
exactly.
to the...
Just hear me out here.
I mean, there was 2 bailiffs there, and there was 2 other ladies standing right next to me.
Right. So he told the judge, right? And the judge, I mean, I don't know how he took it. The judge kind of thought it was sort of a threat.
As a prosecutor, Stuart Scott was willing to cheat. He was dishonest, and he didn't seem to have any problems about not pursuing the truth in a criminal case. As a judge, Stuart Scott also cheated, and yet the only thing that happened to him was he got a public slap on the hand in the form of a public notice from the Commission on Judicial Performance. And Stuart Scott, like several other judges in Santa Clara County, was a long-standing member of the Bar Bench Media Police Committee. And we're going to talk about that and retaliation related to that next.